The wind didn't howl that night. It screamed. Cole Barrett stood at his kitchen window, watching snow devour his ranch in sheets of white violence. The thermometer nailed to the porch post read 11 below zero. The whiskey in his hand had gone cold an hour ago. He hadn't noticed. 3 years since Sarah died. 3 years of this house being too quiet, too clean, too full of her ghost. The blizzard suited him fine. Let it bury everything. Let it bury him too if it wanted. Then he heard the gunshot. Cole's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. The whiskey glass hit the table. He wasn't drunk, never let himself get that far anymore. But for a second he thought maybe his mind had finally cracked. Nobody traveled in weather like this. Nobody. The second shot came clearer. Rifle. Maybe 200 yards out toward the barn. Damn it! Cole grabbed his Winchester from above the door and shrugged into his coat without buttoning it. His boots crunched through 8 inches of powder on the porch. The wind slammed into him like a fist, stealing his breath, turning his face numb in seconds. He couldn't see 20 feet. Couldn't see the barn. Couldn't see anything but white chaos and the dark shape of fence posts disappearing into the storm. He'd had problems with thieves before. Desperate men driven by the brutal winter to steal cattle, tools, anything they could sell. Cole had always scared them off with warning shots and hard words. Tonight felt different. Another shot cracked through the storm, closer now. Cole moved fast through the drifts, Winchester up, finger outside the trigger guard. The barn appeared suddenly out of the white, a dark, hulking shadow with its door hanging open. He'd latched that door himself at sundown. Someone had forced it. He pressed his back against the barn wall and listened. Nothing. Just wind shrieking through gaps in the boards. Cole swung around the doorframe, rifle ready. What he saw didn't make sense. A woman stood in the center of his barn, barely visible in the dim light bleeding through the walls. She wore a dress torn to rags, no coat, her dark hair plastered to her skull with ice. Her left arm hung useless at her side, blood soaking through fabric that had frozen stiff. In her right hand she held a revolver pointed at 7 children huddled behind her in the straw. No, not pointed at them. Pointed at Cole. "Don't," the woman said. Her voice came out broken, rattling. "Don't come closer." Cole kept his rifle trained on her center mass. His mind raced. 7 kids. The oldest looked maybe 13, the youngest couldn't have been more than 4. All of them thin as rails, shaking so hard he could hear their teeth chattering. Their clothes were worse than the woman's. Torn shirts, no shoes, bloody feet wrapped in rags. "Lady," Cole said slowly, "I'm going to need you to put that gun down." "No." She swayed on her feet. Blood dripped from her fingertips onto the frozen straw. "I know what you want. Everyone wants the same thing, but I won't let you. I won't. I don't want anything except to know why you broke into my barn." "Liar." The word came out almost gentle, like she pitied him. "Gideon sent you, or you're working for him, or you're just another man who sees dollar signs when he looks at children." Cole's finger moved closer to his trigger. The woman's gun hand was shaking bad now. Her pupils were blown wide. Shock, blood loss, hypothermia. She was dying on her feet, and she was going to take someone with her if she went down. "I don't know who Gideon is," Cole said, "and I'm not working for anybody. This is my ranch, my barn. Now put the gun down before someone gets hurt." One of the children, a boy with a split lip and frost in his eyebrows, whispered something to the woman. She shook her head violently. "He's lying, Noah. They all lie." "Ma'am." Cole lowered his rifle slightly. "Those kids are freezing. They need warmth, food, medical attention. You're bleeding out. Whatever's happening here, we can sort it later, but right now everyone's going to die if—" "Good!" The woman's scream startled the children into terrified silence. The revolver in her hand swung wildly before she got it under control again. Tears cut tracks through the grime on her face. Better dead than what he'll do to them. Better frozen in a barn than back in those camps. You understand? Better buried in the snow than sold again. Sold. The word hit Cole like a punch to the gut. He looked at the children again. Really looked. The oldest boy had rope burns around both wrists. A girl about 10 had a brand mark on her shoulder, partially hidden by her torn shirt. The youngest child, curled in the straw, had scars across his back visible through gaps in his clothing. These weren't runaways. These weren't thieves' kids or accident victims caught in the storm. These were someone's property. Jesus Christ, Cole breathed. Don't. The woman's gun hand dropped an inch. Don't say his name. Don't pretend you care. Don't. Her legs gave out. She went down hard, gun clattering away into the straw. The children screamed. The oldest boy, Noah, lunged forward to catch her, but he wasn't strong enough. The woman's head cracked against a wooden support beam, and she lay still, blood pooling beneath her shoulder. Cole moved without thinking. He dropped his rifle and crossed the barn in 4 strides. The children scattered like startled rabbits, pressing themselves against the far wall. Only Noah stayed, kneeling beside the woman, his small hands trying uselessly to stop the bleeding. "Don't touch her," Noah shouted, his voice cracked with puberty and terror. "Don't you touch her." Cole ignored him. He rolled the woman onto her back and tore open her dress at the shoulder. The wound was bad. Real bad. Gunshot, at least 2 days old from the look of the infection. The bullet was still in there, pressed up against bone. Fever burned off her skin hot enough that he could feel it through his gloves. "She needs a doctor," Cole said. "No doctors." Noah grabbed Cole's arm with surprising strength. "They'll turn us in. They'll tell Gideon where we are. Kid, she's going to die." "Then she dies!" Noah's face twisted into something too old for his 13 years. "She'd rather die than let him get us back. We all would. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what he—" The boy's voice broke completely. He turned away, shoulders shaking. Cole sat back on his heels. The wind hammered at the barn walls. The children stared at him with eyes that had seen things children shouldn't see. The woman, Vivian, Noah had called her, lay unconscious in a spreading pool of her own blood. He could turn them in, ride to town tomorrow, tell the sheriff, wash his hands of the whole mess. Back in his empty house by nightfall. Back to his whiskey and his ghosts and his carefully maintained solitude. Sarah's voice drifted through his memory, clear as the day she died. "You're a good man, Cole Barrett. Don't let this world make you into something else." "Damn it," Cole muttered. He stood and started stripping off his coat. The children flinched backward, but he ignored them. He wrapped the coat around Vivian's shaking body and scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing, all bone and fury and fading life. "Listen to me," Cole said, looking at Noah. "I'm taking her to my house. You and the others follow. Stay close. The house is 100 yards that way. If you get separated in the storm, you'll die. Understand?" Noah stared at him. "Why are you helping us?" "I don't know," Cole said honestly. "Maybe I'm an idiot, but I'm not going to stand here and watch a woman bleed to death in my barn. You coming or not?" The boy looked back at the other children. They huddled together, 6 sets of eyes watching Cole with animal wariness. Finally, a girl about 9 years old nodded once. The others slowly followed her lead. "Stay behind me," Cole ordered. "Hold on to each other. Don't let go." He kicked open the barn door and stepped into the blizzard. The wind tried to rip Vivian from his arms. Snow blinded him instantly. He couldn't see the house, couldn't see the ground, couldn't see anything but white, and more white, and the dark shape of the woman dying against his chest. He walked by memory and instinct, boots punching through drifts, ice forming in his beard, his lungs burning with cold. Behind him, he heard the children struggling. Someone fell. Someone cried out. He didn't stop, couldn't stop. If he stopped, they'd all freeze. His boot hit the porch step and he nearly went down. He caught himself against the railing, adjusted his grip on Vivian, and kicked the door open. Heat slammed into him. The fire in the hearth still burned, the lamp still glowed on the kitchen table, everything exactly as he'd left it 5 minutes and a lifetime ago. Cole carried Vivian to the table and laid her down carefully. She groaned, eyelids fluttering. Blood soaked through his coat and dripped onto Sarah's old tablecloth. The children stumbled through the door one by one, half frozen and wild-eyed. The oldest girl, the one who'd nodded first, closed the door and threw the bolt without being asked. Noah immediately went to Vivian's side. "She's still breathing," the boy said. Hope and terror fought in his voice. "Barely." Cole grabbed a clean towel and pressed it hard against Vivian's shoulder. She screamed and tried to fight him, but she had no strength left. "I need to get that bullet out. I need—" He stopped. The children were staring at him. They stood in a tight cluster near the door, ready to run, ready to fight, ready to die rather than be taken. The youngest one was crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on his face. The oldest girl kept glancing at the windows like she expected armed men to crash through at any second. "You're safe here," Cole said. It sounded weak even to his own ears. "Nobody's coming through that storm tonight." "That's what Vivian said yesterday," the girl replied. Her voice carried the flat affect of someone who'd stopped believing in safety a long time ago. "Then they found us anyway." "Who found you?" "Gideon's men. They always find us. He owns half of Montana. Sheriff, bounty hunters, drifters looking for reward money. They're all looking for us." "For her." She nodded at Vivian. "They say she killed Gideon's brother. Say she's a murderer. Say we're stolen property." "Are you?" The girl's face hardened. "We're human beings." "That's not what I asked." "She didn't kill anyone," Noah said. He hadn't looked away from Vivian's face. "Gideon killed his own brother, shot him in the back because he wouldn't hand us over. Then he blamed Vivian and put a price on her head. Now everyone from here to the Dakota line is hunting us." Cole looked down at the woman on his table. Her face had gone gray. Her breathing came shallow and fast. The towel under his hand was already soaked through. "I can't get the bullet out without proper tools," he said. "And I can't get proper tools without riding to town. That's a 6-hour trip in good weather. In this storm..." "Then she dies," Noah said simply. "There might be another way." Cole's jaw tightened. "I did field medicine during the war, patched up plenty of men with less than proper tools. But it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt bad." "Do it." Cole looked at the boy, looked at all of them. They stared back with the kind of desperate faith that made his stomach turn. They were trusting him. They'd already lost everything, family, safety, childhood, and they were choosing to trust one more stranger who might betray them. He thought of Sarah again. Thought of her laugh, her fierce kindness, the way she'd always brought home stray dogs and broken birds and tried to fix them. "You're a good man, Cole Barrett." "All right," he said. "Noah, I need you to hold her down. The rest of you, there's bread in the cupboard, jerky hanging by the hearth, water in the pitcher. Eat something, warm up. This is going to take a while." The children didn't move for a long moment. Then the oldest girl, she'd said her name was Ruth, herded the others toward the kitchen. They fell on the food like wolves, tearing into it with their hands, barely chewing before they swallowed. Cole went to the hearth and pulled out his old field kit from the wooden chest where he'd buried it 3 years ago. The leather was cracked with age. The instruments inside still carried faint bloodstains he'd never been able to fully wash away. He'd sworn after Sarah died that he'd never use these tools again, never dig another bullet out of human flesh, never watch someone die on his table. He'd broken that promise in under 5 minutes. "Hold her shoulders," Cole told Noah. "When I start cutting, she's going to fight. Don't let her move." The boy nodded and gripped Vivian's shoulders. His hands shook. Cole poured whiskey over his knife and the bullet probe. The instruments gleamed in the firelight. He took a breath, positioned the blade over the wound, and cut. Vivian's eyes snapped open. She screamed, a raw, animal sound that made the children jump. Her body arched off the table. Noah threw his weight across her shoulders, barely holding her down. "Almost there," Cole lied. He wasn't almost there. He was just starting. He cut deeper. Blood welled up hot and thick. He could feel the bullet now, lodged against her collarbone. He switched to the probe and worked it carefully into the wound. Vivian thrashed again. Her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist hard enough to bruise. Her eyes locked on his. Through the pain and fever, he saw recognition. Saw her trying to understand whether he was savior or executioner. "I'm trying to help," Cole said. "I know you don't believe me, but I'm trying." Something flickered across her face. Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp. "Is she dead?" Noah's voice cracked. "Passed out. Better for everyone." Cole worked faster now. The probe caught the edge of the bullet. He adjusted the angle, got a solid grip, and pulled. The bullet came out with a wet sound that made his stomach turn. It clattered onto the table. A misshapen piece of lead that had nearly killed a woman who'd spent her last strength trying to protect 7 children she probably wasn't related to by blood. He packed the wound with clean cloth, stitched it closed with thread boiled in whiskey, and wrapped her shoulder tight enough to hold but not so tight she'd lose the arm. His hands moved by memory. He'd done the same procedure dozens of times during the war, back when he'd been young and stupid and believed he could save everyone. "She's gonna live?" Noah asked. "Don't know. Fever's bad. Infection's worse. But she's got a chance now." Cole wiped his hands on a towel and looked at the boy properly, for the first time. Rope burns on his wrists, bruises on his face, eyes that had seen too much. "What's your name, kid? Your real name?" "Noah." "How old?" 13, I think. I lost track a while back." "Where'd you come from? Before all this?" Noah's face closed down. "Does it matter?" "Might." The boy was quiet for a long moment. The other children had finished eating and now sat huddled together near the fire, watching, waiting to see if this stranger would help or hurt them. "I was born in a mining camp up in Butte," Noah finally said. "My parents died when I was 6. Tunnel collapse. The company said I owed them for my parents' debts. They put me to work, 12 hours a day in the dark, no pay, just enough food to keep breathing." "That's illegal." "Yeah." Noah's laugh was bitter. "Turns out nobody cares what's illegal when you're a kid with no family and no money. Vivian and her husband found me 3 years ago. They bought my debt from the company, told me I was free." "Why would they do that?" "Because that's what they did. They went from camp to camp, mine to mine, buying up kids who'd been trapped in work contracts or abandoned or sold by their own families. They had a ranch out near Helena, a real one, with horses and rooms and food every day. She taught us to read. Her husband taught us to work land the right way. Not like slaves, but like people who had something to care about." Noah's voice broke. He turned away fast, but not before Cole saw the tears. "Gideon found out," the boy continued. "He said the children belonged to him because they were born on land he owned or in companies he invested in. He showed up with lawyers and guns, told Vivian's husband to hand us over, said he'd pay them well. And her husband refused. He told Gideon to go to hell." Noah's hands clenched into fists. "So Gideon shot him, right in the back, right in front of all of us. Then he told the sheriff that Vivian did it, put a $500 reward on her head. Every hunter and drifter from here to the Dakota line started chasing us. The number hit Cole like a fist. $500 was more money than most men saw in 3 years. For that kind of reward, men would ride through blizzards, would shoot first and ask questions never. How long have you been running? 2 weeks, maybe 3. We've been moving at night, hiding during the day, stealing food when we could. Vivian kept saying we'd make it to the Canadian border if we could just stay ahead of them. But then she got shot. And the storm came and Noah's voice failed completely. Cole looked at the woman on his table, at the children by his fire, at the war he'd just invited into his quiet, lonely life. Sarah's voice whispered through his memory one more time. "Don't let this world make you into something else." "All right," Cole said. "Here's what's going to happen. Vivian stays here until she can travel. You kids sleep by the fire tonight where it's warm. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." "They'll come," Ruth said from her place by the hearth. "Gideon's men, they'll track us here." "In this storm?" "Nobody's tracking anything." "They'll come anyway. They always do." Cole walked to the window and looked out at the blizzard. Snow piled against the glass. Wind shook the walls. Somewhere out in that white chaos, men with guns and greed in their hearts were hunting 7 children who'd already been sold, used, and abandoned by every adult they'd ever known. He thought about riding to town, telling the sheriff, washing his hands of the whole mess. He thought about Sarah, who'd never turned away from anything broken. He thought about being alone in this house for one more winter, drinking whiskey and waiting to die. "Let them come," Cole said quietly. The children stared at him. "I said let them come." He turned from the window. "This is my land, my ranch. I spent 3 years after the war trying to find someplace quiet enough that I could forget what men do to each other. I'm tired of forgetting." "You don't know what you're saying," Noah said. "You don't know what Gideon's capable of." "Kid, I've seen men do things that would make your Gideon look like a saint. I've done things that still wake me up screaming. I know exactly what I'm saying." He walked back to the table and checked Vivian's pulse. Still weak, but steady. Still fighting. "My wife died 3 years ago," Cole said. "Cancer. Ate her up from the inside while I watched. Couldn't stop it. Couldn't save her. Couldn't do anything but hold her hand while she begged me to make the pain stop." The children were silent now. Even Noah had stopped arguing. "I swore after she died that I'd never care about anything again. Never let myself hurt like that again. I'd just work my ranch and drink my whiskey and wait for my turn." Cole's voice went rough. But she'd be ashamed of me if I turned you away. She'd be ashamed of what I've become. So yeah, stay. Heal up. And if Gideon or his men or anyone else comes through that door, they'll have to go through me first. Ruth stood up slowly. She crossed the room until she stood right in front of Cole, close enough that he could see the brand scar on her shoulder, the rope burns on her wrists, the way her hands shook from more than just cold. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for us?" Cole met her eyes, saw the same wariness Vivian had shown him in the barn, the look of someone who'd learned not to trust anything good because good things always came with a price. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe because it's the right thing. Maybe because I'm tired of being alone. Maybe because your friend took a bullet trying to save you, and that deserves something better than bleeding out in a barn." Ruth studied his face for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said. "We'll stay. But if you try to hurt us, any of us, I'll kill you myself." She meant it. Cole could see that. This 9-year-old girl with a brand on her shoulder was prepared to commit murder if it meant protecting her family. "Fair enough," Cole said. He turned back to Vivian. Her fever had spiked higher. Sweat soaked her skin despite the cold. He needed to get liquids in her, needed to keep the wound clean, needed to watch for signs of blood poisoning that would kill her as sure as the bullet would have. The children settled themselves near the fire, wrapped in blankets Cole pulled from the closet. They huddled together like a litter of puppies, drawing warmth and safety from each other's presence. Within minutes, most of them had fallen asleep, the deep, sudden sleep of exhaustion and relief. Only Noah and Ruth stayed awake, watching Cole work. "You really think you can protect us?" Noah asked. "I don't know," Cole said, "but I'm damn sure going to try." Outside, the blizzard screamed. Inside, a wounded woman fought for her life on a kitchen table while 7 children slept by a fire that couldn't quite drive away the cold. And somewhere out in the frozen darkness, men with guns and reward money riding heavy in their minds made plans to hunt children like they were animals worth less than the price on their heads. Cole Barrett poured himself another whiskey and sat down to watch the night. He'd chosen his side. Now he'd find out if he could live with the consequences. The fire crackled. Vivian moaned in her fever dreams. The children breathed soft and steady in their sleep. And the storm howled on. Dawn broke gray and merciless over a world buried in white. Cole woke to the sound of someone crying. He jerked upright in his chair, hand automatically reaching for the rifle propped against the table. His neck screamed from sleeping at an odd angle. His back felt like someone had driven nails through his spine. Vivian still lay on the table, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The youngest child, a boy who couldn't have been more than 4, stood beside her, tears streaming down his face as he touched her hand. "She's cold," the boy whispered. "Why is she so cold?" Cole stood and walked over, his knees popping. He pressed 2 fingers to Vivian's throat. Her pulse fluttered weak but steady beneath his touch. Her skin still burned with fever. "She's sick," Cole said, "but she's alive. That's what matters. Will she wake up?" "I don't know, kid. What's your name?" "Thomas." The boy wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Tommy." "Well, Tommy, your friend Vivian's tougher than she looks. She made it through the night. That's more than most people could do with a wound like that." Tommy seemed to think about this. Then he climbed up onto the bench beside the table and curled himself against Vivian's side, his small hand wrapped around her fingers. Cole didn't have the heart to move him. The other children stirred as morning light crept through the windows. Ruth sat up first, instantly alert, her eyes scanning the room for threats. When she saw Cole standing by the table, she relaxed slightly, but never completely. "Storm stopped," she said. Cole walked to the window. She was right. The blizzard had blown itself out sometime before dawn. The world outside looked like it had been carved from ice, every surface covered in snow so deep it had buried the fence posts. Drifts reached halfway up the barn walls. The sky hung low and pale, pregnant with the promise of more weather. "We need to move," Ruth said. She was already shaking the other children awake. "They'll come now that the storm's done." "Nobody's moving anywhere." Cole turned from the window. "That snow's 4 feet deep in places. You'd freeze to death before you made it a mile." "Then we wait here to die?" Noah appeared from beneath his blanket, his face hard. "That's your plan?" "My plan is to keep everyone alive, starting with breakfast." Cole moved to the kitchen and started pulling out supplies: salt pork, beans, coffee. His hands worked automatically while his mind raced. Ruth was right. Gideon's men would come. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they'd come. $500 was too much money to ignore. He needed time. Time for Vivian to heal. Time to figure out what the hell he'd gotten himself into. "When's the last time any of you ate a real meal?" Cole asked. The children looked at each other. None of them answered. "That long, huh?" Cole set the cast iron skillet on the stove. "All right, here's the deal. You're going to eat, you're going to wash, you're going to rest, and we're going to figure out what comes next." "What comes next is Gideon's men find us and kill Vivian," Noah said flatly. "Then they drag us back to the camps. That's what comes next." Cole poured coffee grounds into the pot. "Not if I have anything to say about it." "You don't." Ruth stood with her arms crossed, every inch of her radiating distrust. "You're one man. Gideon has 50, maybe more. You can't stop them." "Maybe not, but I can sure as hell make them regret trying." The salt pork hit the hot skillet with a violent sizzle. The smell filled the kitchen, rich and fatty and real. Cole watched the children's faces change as the scent reached them. Hunger won out over caution. They drifted closer to the stove like moths to a flame. "How many of you can shoot?" Cole asked. Every hand went up. Cole's eyebrows rose. "All of you?" "Vivian's husband taught us," Noah said. "Said we needed to know how to protect ourselves. Said the world doesn't care if you're a child." "Smart man." "He was." Noah's voice went quiet. "Right up until Gideon put a bullet in his back." Cole flipped the pork. "Tell me about Gideon. Everything. If I'm going to stand against him, I need to know what I'm facing." Ruth and Noah exchanged glances. Finally, Ruth spoke. "Gideon Hale owns half of Montana, maybe more. Mining operations, cattle ranches, logging camps, railroads. If there's money in it, Gideon's got his fingers in it. And children," Noah added bitterly. "He's got his fingers in children, too." Cole's jaw tightened. "Explain." "The mines and camps need workers," Ruth said. "But workers cost money. Food, wages, decent conditions, it all adds up. So Gideon found a cheaper way. He'd find kids nobody cared about, orphans, runaways, children whose parents sold them for a bottle of whiskey or a bag of flour. He'd take them to his operations and work them until they broke." "That's slavery. It's business." Ruth's face was hard. "That's what his lawyers call it. Debt contracts, work agreements, all legal-like. Doesn't matter what you call it when you're 12 years old and you're spending 16 hours a day in a mine shaft so dark you forget what the sun looks like." Cole served up the pork and beans onto tin plates. The children fell on the food like they'd never seen it before. Even Noah, who'd been all hard edges and suspicion, couldn't help wolfing down his portion. "So Vivian and her husband were buying these children?" Cole asked. "Buying us free," Noah corrected, around a mouthful of beans. "They'd find out which companies held our contracts, and they'd pay off the debts. Sometimes they'd just steal us if the company wouldn't sell. They had this ranch out near Helena, 30 kids when I got there. Maybe more by the time—" His voice broke. He stared down at his empty plate. "Gideon found out," Ruth finished for him. "Showed up 3 weeks ago with lawyers and guns. Said every child on that ranch belonged to him because they'd all come from his operations. Said Vivian's husband was a thief. Demanded we be returned to our work contracts." "And when her husband refused?" "Gideon shot him." Noah's hands clenched into fists. "Right in front of all of us. Then he told the sheriff it was Vivian who pulled the trigger. Said she'd gone crazy. Said she was holding us hostage. Put that $500 bounty on her head before the body was even cold." Cole poured coffee into chipped mugs. His mind was working through the implications. A man with that much power, that much reach, fighting him wasn't just dangerous. It was suicidal. "The other children from the ranch," Cole said. "What happened to them?" Ruth's face went pale. "Gideon's men took them. We heard screaming, saw them loading kids onto wagons like cattle. Vivian grabbed the 7 of us, the ones she could reach, and we ran. We've been running ever since." The kitchen fell silent except for the crackle of the fire and Tommy's quiet sniffles from where he still lay curled against Vivian. Cole walked to the window again. The sun had climbed higher now, turning the snow into a field of blinding white. Beautiful and deadly in equal measure. He could see for miles from here. Could see anyone approaching long before they arrived. That was good. He'd need every advantage he could get. I need to check the barn, Cole said. Make sure the livestock made it through the night. You kids stay inside, keep the door bolted. Anyone comes near, you wake Vivian if you can and hide if you can't. You're leaving us? Fear cracked through Ruth's careful control. I'm walking 100 yards to my barn. I'll be back in 20 minutes. That's what Vivian's husband said. Ruth's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He said he'd be right back. He went outside to check on something, then we heard the gunshot. Cole knelt down so he was eye level with the girl. Up close he could see she'd been pretty once, before whatever had happened to her carved the hardness into her features. I'm not leaving you, Cole said. I'm checking my animals. That's all. Everyone leaves. Ruth's eyes were dry, but her voice shook. Everyone dies or leaves or sells us or... I'm not everyone. How do I know that? Cole didn't have an answer that would satisfy her. Words were cheap. He'd learned that during the war, when officers made promises they couldn't keep and men died believing lies. So instead, he took off his father's watch, the only thing of value he owned, and pressed it into Ruth's hand. This was my pa's, Cole said. He gave it to me before he died. Told me it was worth more than all the money in Montana. You hold on to it while I'm gone. When I come back, you give it back. That's my promise to you. I'm coming back. Ruth stared at the watch in her palm. The gold casing caught the firelight. Her fingers closed around it slowly. Okay, she whispered. Cole stood and grabbed his coat. Noah followed him to the door. You really think you can protect us? The boy asked. Against Gideon? Against everyone who's looking for that reward money? I don't know, Cole said honestly, but I'm damn sure going to try. He stepped out into the cold. The world had gone silent in the way only deep snow could create. A muffled, cotton-wrapped quiet that pressed against his ears. His breath plumed white. His boots punched through the crust with each step, sinking deep. The barn doors hung open, snow drifted halfway inside. Cole's 2 horses stood in their stalls, stamping and snorting, unhappy but alive. His 4 cows huddled together in the corner, steam rising from their bodies. Everything had survived the night. Cole fed and watered the animals, then stood in the barn doorway looking back at his house. Smoke curled from the chimney. Through the window he could see movement, small shadows of children who should have been playing instead of running for their lives. Sarah's voice drifted through his memory. Not words this time, just the feeling of her. The way she'd always pushed him to be better than he thought he could be. The way she'd seen the good in him even when he couldn't see it himself. I don't know what I'm doing, Cole said to the empty air. But you'd do the same damn thing. You'd take in every broken creature in Montana if you could. The wind picked up, swirling snow devils across the white expanse. Cole was turning to head back when he saw them. Riders, 4 of them, coming up the long approach to his ranch, their horses struggling through the deep snow. Still half a mile out, but getting closer. Cole's blood went cold. He ran. The snow tried to drag him down with every step. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. He covered the 100 yards to the house in what felt like hours, but was probably less than a minute. He burst through the door. Riders coming, Cole gasped. 4 of them, maybe 5 minutes out. The children jumped to their feet. Ruth's hand went to the knife she'd apparently been hiding in her dress. Noah grabbed the youngest children and pushed them toward the back bedroom. It's Gideon's men, Ruth said. Not a question, a certainty. Don't know. Don't care. Cole grabbed his rifle from above the door and started checking the loads. You kids get in the back room with Vivian. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. What are you going to do? Noah asked. Talk to them. And if talking doesn't work... Cole worked the lever action, cycling around into the chamber. Then we'll try something else. Ruth moved toward his bedroom, but she stopped at the threshold and looked back at Cole. Don't die, she said. We've had enough people die. Then she was gone, herding the children into the back room and closing the door behind them. Cole positioned himself by the front window where he could see the approach. The riders were closer now, close enough that he could make out details. They wore heavy coats and wide-brimmed hats pulled low, all of them armed, all of them moving with the casual confidence of men who expected no resistance. They pulled up in front of the house. The lead rider, a man with a scar running from his eye to his jaw, dismounted and walked toward the door like he owned the place. Cole opened it before the man could knock. Help you? Cole asked. The scarred man smiled. His teeth were yellow and crooked. "Morning, friend. Name's Jack Dawson. We're looking for a woman and some children. Heard they might have passed through here. Haven't seen anyone. Storm was pretty bad last night." That it was. Dawson's smile never reached his eyes. "But see, here's the thing. We tracked them to your property yesterday afternoon. Then the blizzard hit, and we lost the trail. But tracks don't lie. They came here. If they did, they didn't stop. My land's big, easy to cut across without me knowing." "Is that so?" Dawson looked past Cole into the house. "Mind if we come in and warm up? Long, cold ride. Cup of coffee would do us good." "I mind." The smile finally dropped from Dawson's face. "You're harboring fugitives, friend. That's a crime. That woman killed a man. She's dangerous. She's also not here. Then you won't mind if we search the place." "I mind that too." One of the other riders dismounted. He was younger than Dawson, maybe 20, with the kind of cruel eyes that enjoyed hurting things. "Just let us in, old man," the young one said. "Save everyone the trouble." "I'm 38, Cole said. "And the only trouble here is you boys trespassing on my land." Dawson's hand drifted toward his gun. "Gideon Hale's offering $500 for that woman, dead or alive. You really want to stand between us and that kind of money?" "I'm standing between you and my property. What you do next is up to you." The four men exchanged glances. Cole could see them calculating. 4 against 1. Easy odds. But he was behind a door with a rifle, and they were standing in the open with pistols. "Listen," Dawson said, his voice taking on a reasonable tone. "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. How about this? You let us search your barn and outbuildings. We confirm the woman's not here, and we ride on. No trouble. No problems. Barn's empty except for my animals. Then you got nothing to worry about." Cole's finger moved closer to his trigger. "You're not searching anything. This is my land, my property. You don't have a warrant. You don't have legal authority. All you've got is greed. So here's how this is going to work. You're going to get back on your horses and ride off. And if I see you anywhere near here again, I'll shoot you for trespassing." The young one laughed. "You and what army, old man?" "Don't need an army, just need this." Cole raised the rifle slightly. "Winchester 73, holds 15 rounds. I can drop all 4 of you before you clear leather. Want to test that theory?" The standoff stretched. Snow swirled around the riders' horses. Steam rose from the animals' flanks. In the back room, Cole heard one of the children cough, a small sound, but enough to make Dawson's eyes narrow. "You've got someone back there," Dawson said. "Got my business back there. None of yours. If you're hiding that woman, you're making a big mistake. Gideon Hale doesn't forget. He'll burn this ranch to the ground and you with it. Then I'll die on my own land defending my own property, better than most men get." Something shifted in Dawson's expression. A calculation. He'd been a soldier once, Cole could tell. Recognized the way the man assessed angles and odds. "All right," Dawson said slowly. "We'll go. But this ain't over. Gideon's going to hear about this. And when he does, tell him Cole Barrett says to go to hell." Dawson's jaw tightened. He turned and walked back to his horse. The others followed, mounting up. But before they rode off, Dawson looked back one more time. "You just signed your death warrant, Barrett." Wouldn't be the first time. The riders wheeled their horses around and headed back down the approach road, their mounts struggling through the deep snow. Cole watched until they disappeared over the rise. Then he watched for another 10 minutes, making sure they weren't circling back. Finally, he lowered the rifle and closed the door. His hands were shaking. He hadn't noticed before, but now the adrenaline was draining away and leaving him hollow. He leaned against the door and took a deep breath. The bedroom door opened. Ruth emerged first, still gripping her knife. "They're gone?" she asked. "For now. They'll be back." "I know." Noah came out next, his face pale. "You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have stood up to them. Now Gideon knows where we are. Now he knows someone's protecting us. He'll come with everything he's got." "Probably." "So why did you do it?" Ruth's voice cracked. "Why would you risk everything for us? You don't even know us." Cole set his rifle back above the door. His hands had stopped shaking. He felt tired, old, but also more alive than he'd felt in 3 years. "My wife used to say there's 2 kinds of people in this world," Cole said. Those who see suffering and look away, and those who see suffering and step in. She was the second kind, always. Even when it hurt her, even when it cost her. He turned to face the children, 7 pairs of eyes staring at him with that same wary hope. I spent 3 years looking away, Cole continued. 3 years hiding on this ranch, drinking myself stupid, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. And maybe if you'd shown up a month ago or a year ago, I would have turned you in, saved myself the trouble. But? Noah asked. But I'm tired of being the man who looks away. I'm tired of being ashamed of what I've become. Cole's voice went rough. So yeah, I stood up to them. And yeah, it's going to bring hell down on all of us. But at least when I die, I'll die knowing I did something that mattered. Ruth crossed the room and pressed his father's watch back into his palm. You came back, she said quietly. I came back. From the bedroom, Vivian moaned. Tommy appeared in the doorway, his face streaked with tears. She's awake, the boy said. She's calling for Noah. They all rushed to the bedroom. Vivian lay on the bed where Cole had moved her earlier, her eyes half open and unfocused. Her fever had broken sometime during the confrontation with Dawson's men. Sweat soaked her hair. Her skin had lost that dangerous gray pallor. Noah? Her voice came out barely a whisper. I'm here. Noah knelt beside the bed and took her hand. We're all here. We're safe. Where? She tried to sit up and gasped in pain. Where are we? A ranch, couple miles from where we took shelter in the barn. The owner brought us here. Noah glanced at Cole. He saved your life. Vivian's eyes found Cole. For a long moment, she just stared at him. He could see her mind working, trying to assess threat level, trying to understand what kind of man would help them. You took the bullet out, she said finally. Yeah. Why? Seemed like the right thing to do. Nothing's ever the right thing. Vivian's eyes drifted closed. Everything costs. Everything hurts. You'll regret this. Maybe, but that's my problem. She was quiet for so long, Cole thought she'd passed out again. Then she opened her eyes and looked at the children clustered around her bed. Gideon's men came, she said. Not a question. How did you... Cole started. I know how he works. I know he never stops. She tried to sit up again, failed again. We need to leave, now, before he sends more, before he... You can't even stand, Cole said. You're going to rest. We're going to figure this out, and then we'll decide what comes next. There is no figuring this out. Vivian's voice rose, panic breaking through. You don't understand what you've done. Gideon owns sheriffs, owns judges, owns half the territory. He'll destroy you. He'll burn your ranch. He'll kill everyone you've ever loved. And when he's done with you, he'll take these children and... Her voice cracked completely. She turned her face away, but not before Cole saw the tears. Let him try, Cole said quietly. Vivian looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You're just one man. So was your husband. He still tried. And now he's dead. We're all going to die eventually. Question is whether we die running or die standing. Ruth moved closer to the bed and took Vivian's other hand. He stood up to them, Viv. 4 of Gideon's men. He told them to leave or he'd kill them. They left. That just means they'll come back with more, Vivian said. But something in her voice had changed, a faint flicker of hope fighting against overwhelming despair. Then we'll face more, Cole said. But we'll face them here. On ground I know, with time to prepare. Why? Vivian's voice broke. Why are you doing this? Cole thought about all the reasons he could give. Duty, justice, redemption. None of them felt true enough. Because I'm tired of living like I'm already dead, he said finally. And because those kids deserve better than what this world's given them. Vivian studied his face. Whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. All right, she whispered. But when it all goes to hell, and it will go to hell, don't say I didn't warn you. Fair enough. She closed her eyes. Within seconds, her breathing had evened out into sleep. Cole herded the children out of the bedroom and back to the kitchen. They needed food, needed routine, needed something normal in a world that had gone completely sideways. How long before they come back? Noah asked. Day, maybe 2. Depends on how far Gideon is and how fast Dawson can reach him. What do we do until then? Cole looked at the 7 children standing in his kitchen. They were filthy, exhausted, traumatized, but they were also alive. That counted for something. We get ready, Cole said. I'm going to teach you how to defend this ranch. And when Gideon comes, because he will come, we're going to show him what happens when you try to take something from people who've got nothing left to lose. Ruth smiled for the first time. It was a hard smile, a dangerous smile. The smile of someone who'd learned to survive by becoming sharp enough to cut. I like you, Mr. Barrett, she said. Cole? Just Cole. I like you, Cole. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The snow began to melt in slow rivulets. And somewhere out there, men with guns and greed were making plans to take back what they believed they owned. But inside this ranch house, 7 children and 1 broken-hearted man were making plans of their own. The war was coming. They'd be ready. 3 days passed like holding your breath underwater. Cole spent the first day turning his ranch into something that could be defended. He showed Noah and Ruth how to barricade the windows with furniture heavy enough to stop bullets. Taught them which angles gave the best line of sight for shooting. Where to position themselves if men came from the east versus the west. The children learned fast, too fast. They'd already been taught that survival meant thinking 10 steps ahead. By the second day, Vivian could sit up without screaming. The fever had broken clean, leaving her weak but clear-headed. She watched from her bed as Cole drilled the children on reloading procedures, on breathing steady when your hands wanted to shake, on the difference between warning shots and killing shots. You're teaching them to be soldiers, Vivian said when Cole brought her water that afternoon. I'm teaching them to stay alive. It's not the same thing. Close enough. Cole set the cup beside her. You need to eat something. You're not going to heal on water and spite. I've survived on less. She probably had. Cole could see it in the way her body had learned to function on the edge of starvation, in the calluses on her hands that spoke of hard labor, in the scars that mapped a life spent fighting. Your husband, Cole said. What was his name? Vivian's face closed down. Why? Because those kids loved him. Because he died trying to protect them. Seems like he deserves to be remembered as more than just Vivian's husband. She was quiet for a long time. Outside, Cole could hear Ruth teaching the younger children a song. Something about mockingbirds and diamond rings. The normalcy of it felt wrong and right in equal measure. Daniel, Vivian finally said. His name was Daniel Hale. Hale, same as Gideon. Brothers? Though Daniel would have cut his own throat before claiming that relationship. Her voice went bitter. They grew up together. Daniel was the older one. Should have inherited everything when their father died. But their father's will split everything between them. Half to Daniel, half to Gideon. Cole sat down in the chair beside the bed. Let me guess. Gideon wasn't satisfied with half. Gideon's never satisfied with anything. He spent 20 years building his empire while Daniel... She stopped, swallowed hard. Daniel tried to do something good with his inheritance, started buying up abandoned children, giving them a home, teaching them skills so they could make their own way. Expensive habit. It was everything we had. We sold land to feed them, sold cattle to clothe them. We were going broke trying to save kids nobody else wanted. Her hands twisted in the blanket. Gideon found out. Came to the ranch with his lawyers. Said every child we'd bought had been contracted to his operations. Said we'd stolen his property, demanded we return them all. And Daniel refused. Daniel told him the children weren't property, told him to go to hell. So Gideon, her voice cracked. He pulled his gun. Right there in our kitchen. Daniel didn't even see it coming. He was pouring coffee, laughing about something Noah had said that morning. Then there was a gunshot, and he was on the floor, and there was so much blood. She turned her face away, but Cole saw her shoulders shake. The children saw it happen, Vivian continued after a moment. All 30 of them. Gideon looked them in the eyes and told them if they ever spoke about what they'd seen, he'd hunt them down and kill them one by one. Then he told his men to load the children onto wagons. I grabbed the 7 closest to me and we ran. Just ran. Didn't even stop to bury Daniel, just ran. And Gideon blamed you for the murder. He's smart. He knew a grieving widow with a bunch of stolen children wouldn't have any credibility against a wealthy landowner with lawyers and connections. By the time we'd made it 10 miles, There were wanted posters with my face on them in every town from Helena to the border. Cole thought about Dawson and his men. Thought about the $500 reward. Thought about how many people would kill a woman and drag 7 children back into slavery for that kind of money. We can't run forever, Vivian said quietly. Even if I heal, even if we make it through whatever's coming, Gideon will never stop. He'll chase us until we're all dead or back in his camps. Then we don't run. What? We don't run, Cole repeated. We fight. We expose what he's doing. We get word to someone who can actually do something about it. Vivian laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like who? The sheriff? The judge? The marshal? They're all in Gideon's pocket. The whole territory is corrupt from top to bottom. Then we go higher. Territorial governor, federal marshals, newspapers in Denver or San Francisco that aren't afraid to print the truth. You're talking about taking on the most powerful man in Montana, with 7 children and 1 half-dead woman. That's not a plan. That's suicide. Maybe. Cole stood and walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of blood and gold. But I've already chosen my side, and I'll be damned if I'm going to spend whatever time I've got left running scared. That night, Gideon's men came back. Cole saw them first, a line of torches moving up the approach road in the darkness. Not 4 men this time. At least a dozen. Maybe more. Wake everyone, Cole told Ruth, who'd volunteered to take first watch. Get them in position. This is it. The children moved with practiced efficiency, taking up the positions Cole had drilled into them. Noah at the front window with a rifle, Ruth at the side window with another. The younger children huddled in the back bedroom with Vivian, who'd insisted on having a loaded pistol despite barely being able to lift it. Cole stood on his front porch and watched the riders approach. They stopped 50 yards out, just beyond effective rifle range. The torches illuminated hard faces and harder eyes. Mercenaries and bounty hunters and men who'd learned that violence paid better than honest work. Dawson sat his horse at the front of the group. Beside him rode a man Cole had never seen before. Older, well-dressed, sitting his mount like he owned the world. Even from a distance, Cole could feel the weight of authority radiating from him. That's Gideon, Noah whispered from inside the house. That's him. The well-dressed man urged his horse forward a few steps. When he spoke, his voice carried clear and strong across the frozen distance. Cole Barrett, my name is Gideon Hale. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't have anything of yours, Cole called back. Now get off my property. The woman and children you're harboring are my legal property. I have documentation proving ownership of their labor contracts. What you're doing is theft, criminal theft. What I'm doing is harboring people who need help. There's no crime in that. There is when those people are fugitives from justice. Gideon's voice never rose, never wavered. He spoke with the calm certainty of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. The woman murdered my brother. She's wanted for that crime. The children are contracted laborers who have broken their legal agreements. I'm here to reclaim what's mine and see justice served. Cole's hand tightened on his rifle. Your brother was murdered, all right, by you. Those kids saw the whole thing. The testimony of property has no legal standing. Gideon smiled. Cole could see it even from 50 yards away. A cold shark smile that never touched his eyes. Now, I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to let this go. You turn over the woman and children, I'll forget you were ever involved. You can keep your ranch, your life, your dignity. Everyone walks away, except the children. The children will be returned to their proper work assignments. They'll be fed, sheltered. They'll learn valuable skills. It's more than most orphans can hope for. You mean they'll be worked to death in your mines and camps? I mean they'll be productive members of society instead of drains on resources. Gideon's voice hardened slightly. Last chance, Barrett. Give them up, or I'll take them by force. And when I do, I'll burn your ranch to the ground and make sure everyone in Montana knows what happens to men who steal from Gideon Hale. Cole could feel Noah watching him from inside the house. Could feel all 7 children waiting to see if this stranger would betray them like every other adult in their lives. He thought about Sarah, about the way she'd always pushed him to be better, about the man he'd been before the war and grief had hollowed him out. Come and take them, Cole said. The words hung in the frozen air. Gideon's smile disappeared. You're making a grave mistake. Wouldn't be my first. I have 12 men. You're one old rancher with a handful of children. You can't win this. Don't have to win, just have to make you bleed enough that you decide it's not worth it. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Gideon raised his hand. The men behind him spread out, forming a loose semicircle around the house. Rifles came up. Pistols cleared leather. Torch the barn first, Gideon ordered. Let him watch his livelihood burn. Then we'll see how brave he feels. 2 men dismounted and started toward the barn, torches in hand. Cole fired. The shot cracked across the night. One of the torches exploded in a shower of sparks as the bullet tore through it. The man holding it dove for cover. Next one goes through flesh, Cole called. Your choice. The men looked at Gideon. Gideon's face had gone hard as stone. He's bluffing. Burn it. The men advanced again, more cautiously this time. Cole fired again, kicking up snow inches from the lead man's foot. The man jumped back. I said the next one goes through flesh. I'm a patient man, but my patience has limits. You can't stop all of us, Gideon said. Sooner or later, you'll run out of bullets or nerve. And when you do, a second rifle shot cut him off. This one came from inside the house. Noah's rifle. The bullet hit the ground between Gideon's horse's front legs. The animal reared, nearly throwing its rider. There's 8 of us, Cole said. And we've got enough ammunition to hold you off for a week. How many of your men are you willing to lose? Because I guarantee you're going to lose some. Maybe you're willing to die for $500 and some slave labor. But are they? He could see the calculation in Gideon's face, the math of violence. 12 against 8 sounded like good odds until you factored in that the 8 were behind cover and willing to die where they stood, while the 12 were exposed and mostly motivated by money. This isn't over, Gideon said finally. I'll come back with 50 men, 100 if I have to. I'll lay siege to this ranch until you're all starving and begging for mercy. Then you'll have to explain to the territorial governor why you need an army to reclaim some orphan children. Might raise some uncomfortable questions. I own the governor. Maybe, but you don't own everyone. And the more men you bring, the more witnesses there are. The more people who'll talk about what really happened to your brothers. Gideon's jaw tightened. He was used to winning through intimidation, through wealth, through the simple fact that no one had ever been willing to stand against him. Cole could see the frustration building behind those cold eyes. You think you're protecting them, Gideon said, but all you're doing is prolonging their suffering. They're mine, Barrett. They've always been mine. The only question is how many people die before you accept that. I accept that you're a coward who shoots his own brother in the back. I accept that you built your empire on the backs of children too small to fight back. And I accept that sooner or later, men like you always get what's coming to them. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Gideon stared at Cole for a long moment. Then he wheeled his horse around. We're leaving, for now. But this ranch is surrounded. Anyone tries to leave, they'll be shot. Anyone tries to bring in supplies, they'll be shot. You want to hole up and play hero? Fine. Let's see how long you last when the food runs out and the cold sets in, and those children start dying one by one. The riders pulled back, retreating to a distance of about a quarter mile, far enough that they were outside rifle range, close enough that Cole could see their campfires when they lit them. The siege had begun. Cole stepped back inside and closed the door. His hands were shaking again. The children stared at him with wide eyes. They're not leaving, Ruth said. No, they're not. So what do we do? Cole set his rifle down and walked to the kitchen. He needed coffee, needed something to do with his hands that didn't involve shooting, needed a minute to think. Vivian appeared in the bedroom doorway, leaning heavily on the frame. Her face was pale but determined. You should have given us up, she said. Probably. Now we're all going to die. Maybe. Then why? Her voice broke. Why would you do this? Why would you throw your life away for us? Cole poured coffee into a cup. His hands had stopped shaking. That was something. You ever been to war? He asked. No, I have. Spent 3 years watching men die for causes they barely understood. Watching boys get torn apart by cannon fire while officers sat in comfortable tents drinking brandy. Came home thinking if I could just find someplace quiet, someplace peaceful, I could forget all that death. He took a sip of coffee. It burned his tongue. But you can't forget, can't run from it. The war follows you, the death follows you, And one day you wake up and realize you've spent so long running from violence that you've forgotten how to stand up for anything. Cole turned to face them. 7 children and 1 wounded woman, all watching him like he held their fates in his hands. Maybe he did. "I'm done running," he said. "I'm done pretending that looking away makes me innocent. Your Daniel stood up to Gideon and died for it. Least I can do is finish what he started." Vivian crossed the room slowly, each step clearly painful. She stopped in front of Cole and looked up at his face. Her eyes were wet. "You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the stupidest." "Probably both." She laughed, a sharp broken sound that turned into a sob halfway through. Then she wrapped her arms around Cole and held on like she was drowning, and he was the only solid thing in the world. The children crowded around them. Tommy grabbed Cole's leg. Ruth pressed against Vivian's side. Noah stood a little apart, trying to be tough, but his eyes were shining. "So what's the plan?" Noah asked. "We can't stay here forever. They'll starve us out." "We've got supplies for maybe 2 weeks if we ration careful," Cole said. "Water's not a problem, plenty of snow to melt. But you're right, we can't win by waiting." "Then what?" Cole looked at the faces around him. Children who'd been sold and beaten and worked like animals. Children who'd learned not to trust anyone because trust got you hurt. And yet here they were, still hoping, still fighting, still believing that maybe somewhere there was someone who gave a damn. "We get word out," Cole said. "Find someone who isn't corrupt. Someone who'll listen. But that means one of us has to break through Gideon's line and make it to town." "That's suicide," Ruth said flatly. "They'll shoot whoever tries on sight." "Not if they don't see them coming." Cole walked to the window and studied the layout of Gideon's camp. The men had positioned themselves to cover the obvious routes, the main road, the open ground to the east and west. But there was a ravine to the north, hidden by a rise in the land. A single person moving at night might be able to use it as cover. "I'll go," Noah said. "I'm small, fast. I can make it." "No," Vivian's voice was sharp. "You're not risking your life." "I'm risking it anyway." Noah's composure cracked. "We're all risking it. At least if I go, I might actually accomplish something. I might be able to get help before we all die here." "The kid's right," Cole said. "Small target, knows how to move quiet, and he's got the most to lose if Gideon wins." "He's 13 years old. I'm 13 years old and I've been working in mines since I was 6, Noah shot back. "I've seen men die, seen worse things than that. Don't treat me like I'm some innocent child who needs protecting. I stopped being a child the day your husband got shot." The words hit Vivian like a slap. She staggered back, her face crumpling. "I'm sorry," Noah said quickly. "I didn't mean—" "No." Vivian's voice was steady now, though tears ran down her face. "You're right. You all grew up too fast because of what we did. Because Daniel and I thought we could save everyone. Because I thought—" She couldn't finish. Cole stepped forward. "Listen to me, all of you. What happened to you wasn't your fault. What happened to Daniel wasn't your fault. The only person responsible for any of this is Gideon. He's the one who built an empire on child slavery. He's the one who murdered his own brother. And he's the one who's going to pay for it." "How?" Ruth asked. "How is he going to pay? Men like Gideon never pay. They're too rich, too powerful. They do whatever they want and the law looks the other way." "Then we make the law look," Cole said. "Noah, you're going to ride to Billings. It's 3 days from here if you push hard. There's a federal marshal there, man named Clayton Webb. Knew him during the war. He's one of the few honest lawmen left in the territory. And if he doesn't believe me, you tell him Cole Barrett sent you. Tell him everything that happened. Tell him about the camps, the children, the murder. Tell him Gideon Hale is running the biggest criminal operation in Montana and nobody's stopping him because they're all too scared or too corrupt. That's assuming I make it to Billings, assuming Gideon's men don't catch me, Assuming's all we've got right now," Cole interrupted. "But I'll give you the best chance I can. We'll create a distraction on the other side of the camp, draw their attention. While they're busy with that, you slip out through the North Ravine." "What kind of distraction?" Cole smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "The kind that involves fire and bullets and making them think we're trying to break through their line. They'll all rush to stop us. That should give you a window." "Should." "Nothing's guaranteed, kid. But doing nothing is the same as dying slow. At least this way we're fighting back." Noah looked at Vivian. She stared at him with eyes full of love and terror and resignation. "Can't lose you too," she whispered. "Then I better not get caught." The plan was simple, which meant it would probably fall apart immediately. But it was all they had. They spent the rest of the night preparing. Cole showed Noah the safest route through the ravine, marked on a hand-drawn map. Gave him his fastest horse and his warmest coat. Packed supplies, dried meat, water, a loaded pistol, and a letter Cole wrote explaining everything to Marshal Webb. "Don't stop for anything," Cole told the boy. "Don't trust anyone. Gideon's reach is long. There'll be people who recognize you, who'll try to turn you in for the reward. You see anyone coming, you ride the other way. What if the horse goes lame? You walk, crawl if you have to, but you get to Billings and you find Webb." Noah folded the map carefully and tucked it inside his shirt. His hands weren't quite steady, but his jaw was set. He looked older than 13, looked like someone who'd already lived too much life. "Thank you," the boy said quietly, "for everything, for not turning us away, for fighting when you didn't have to, for save the thanks for when this is over. If this is over." "When?" Cole repeated firmly. "Now get some rest. We moved 2 hours before dawn." Noah disappeared into the back room with the other children. Vivian stayed in the kitchen, sitting at the table, staring at nothing. "He's going to die out there," she said. "You know that. He's going to die, and it'll be my fault. Another person I got killed. Or he's going to make it. He's going to find Webb, and Webb's going to bring federal authority down on Gideon so hard he won't know what hit him. You don't believe that. Doesn't matter what I believe, matters what we do next." Vivian laughed bitterly. "You sound like Daniel. He was always so sure that doing the right thing would work out, that saving one more child would somehow make a difference. Look where it got him." "It got 30 children out of slavery," Cole said. 7 of them are still free because he fought for them. That's not nothing. It's also not enough. It never is, but you fight anyway. You keep fighting until there's nothing left." Vivian looked up at him. Her face was gaunt from illness and grief, but there was steel underneath. The kind of strength that could only come from losing everything and choosing to keep going anyway. "I used to think I was strong," she said, "before all this. I thought I could handle anything. Then I watched them shoot Daniel, watched the life go out of his eyes, and I realized I'm not strong at all. I'm just stubborn. Too stubborn to die when dying would be easier. Stubborn works." "Does it? Because right now I'm sitting in a stranger's kitchen planning to send a 13-year-old boy to his probable death while armed men surround us and wait for us to starve. Doesn't feel like stubborn is working out great." Cole sat down across from her. "You want to know what I think? I think you've been carrying all this weight by yourself for so long you've forgotten what it's like to share the load. Daniel's gone. You can't change that. But those 7 kids are alive because of you. And when Gideon finally goes down, and he will go down, it'll be because you didn't quit." Pretty words. True words. Cole stood. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be ugly." He walked to the window and looked out at the distant campfires. Gideon's men were settling in for a long siege. They probably thought it would be easy, thought they'd just wait until the people inside got desperate enough to surrender. They didn't understand that everyone inside had already been desperate for so long that it was just their natural state. 2 hours before dawn, Cole woke the children. They moved in the dark, speaking in whispers. Noah was already dressed, Cole's coat hanging almost to his knees. The boy looked terrified, also determined. "Remember the plan," Cole said. "Wait for the noise, count to 60, then run like hell." "I remember." Cole checked the pistol one more time, made sure Noah had the map and the letter to Webb. The horse waited in the barn, already saddled. "You're a good kid, Noah. Your parents would have been proud." "I don't remember my parents." "Then Daniel would have been proud, and that's worth something." Noah's eyes went shiny. He nodded quickly and headed for the barn. Cole gathered Ruth and the 2 oldest boys, Marcus and James, twins who rarely spoke but could shoot straight. Together, they crept to the east side of the house, the side farthest from the north ravine. "On my signal," Cola whispered. "We open fire. Aim high. We're not trying to hit anyone, just make noise. Make them think we're trying to break through. Soon as they start moving to intercept, we pull back to the house. Understand?" 3 nods in the darkness. Cole counted down silently. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He raised his rifle and fired. The shot cracked across the pre-dawn stillness. Ruth and the boys opened up a second later, their rifles barking in rapid succession. Cole fired again, then again, working the lever action as fast as his hands could move. In Gideon's camp, men shouted, torches flared to life, riders scrambled for their horses. Again, Cole ordered. Pour it on. They kept firing, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness. Bullets whined overhead, Gideon's men returning fire now, but they were shooting blind, wasting ammunition on shadows. Cole counted to 60, prayed it was enough time. Then he grabbed Ruth by the shoulder. Back inside, now! They ran for the house, bullets kicking up snow around their feet. One round hit the doorframe as Cole dove through. Marcus took a piece of wood splinter to the cheek but kept moving. They slammed the door and threw the bolt. Outside, Gideon's men were circling, trying to figure out what had happened, whether it was a real breakout attempt or a diversion. Cole ran to the north window. In the faint pre-dawn light, he could just make out a small figure on horseback, moving fast through the ravine. Noah. The boy was keeping low, using the terrain for cover. Then he was over the rise and gone. He made it, Ruth breathed. He actually made it. First part, Cole said. Still got 3 days of riding ahead of him. The firing outside intensified. Gideon's men had realized they'd been played. Bullets hammered into the house, shattering windows, punching through walls. The children threw themselves flat. Everyone stay down, Cole shouted. They're angry. Let them waste their ammunition. The fusillade lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then silence fell, broken only by the sound of men reloading and cursing. Gideon's voice cut through the darkness. That was clever, Barrett, but all you've done is sign that boy's death warrant. I've got men on every road between here and civilization. He won't make it 10 miles. Cole didn't answer, didn't need to. Noah was already gone, already racing toward Billings and Marshall Webb and maybe, just maybe, salvation. Or death. Probably death. But at least they'd tried. At least they'd fought back. The sun rose slowly over the frozen ranch, painting the snow red as blood. Inside the besieged house, 6 children and 2 adults waited for either rescue or the end. And somewhere in the frozen Montana wilderness, a 13-year-old boy rode toward the only hope any of them had left. The siege lasted 6 days before everything went to hell. Cole watched their supplies dwindle with each sunrise. The salt pork ran out on day 3. The beans on day 4. By day 5, they were eating snow mixed with the last of the flour, calling it soup and pretending it filled their stomachs. The children never complained. That was the worst part. They just got quieter, thinner, their eyes growing larger in their shrinking faces. Tommy stopped asking when Vivian would get better. Ruth stopped humming those songs. Even Marcus and James, who'd been inseparable, started sitting on opposite sides of the room to conserve warmth. Vivian healed slowly, her shoulders still too weak to lift a rifle but strong enough that she could move around without gasping. She spent most of her time at the windows, watching Gideon's camp, counting their supplies, calculating odds that got worse every hour. Noah's been gone 6 days, she said on the morning of day 7. If he made it to Billings, if Webb believed him, if help was coming, they should be here by now. Cole didn't answer. He was rationing the last of the coffee, making it so weak it barely colored the water. His hands shook from hunger and cold. He'd been giving most of his portions to the children, lying about having eaten earlier. He's dead, Vivian continued. Her voice was flat, empty. Gideon's men caught him, or the horse broke a leg, or he froze to death, or he's riding back right now with a marshal and 50 federal deputies, Cole interrupted. We don't know. We know. We just don't want to say it. She was probably right. Cole had led enough men during the war to recognize the feel of a losing fight, the desperate hope that turned to grim acceptance, the way time stretched out when you were waiting to die. But he couldn't let the children see him give up. So he kept checking the rifles, kept counting ammunition, kept pretending there was still a chance. Gideon's men had settled into a routine. They circled the house twice a day, just close enough to remind everyone they were still there. Sometimes they'd fire a few shots, not aiming to kill, but to remind the people inside that they could kill whenever they wanted. Psychological warfare, wearing them down. It was working. On the 8th day, Tommy collapsed while helping Ruth melt snow for water. Just dropped like someone had cut his strings. Cole carried him to the bedroom, felt his forehead burning with fever, saw the way the boy's breathing had gone shallow and fast. He needs food, Vivian said. Real food. Medicine. He's not going to make it like this. None of us are. The words hung in the cold air between them. Ruth stood in the doorway, her face carefully blank. She'd heard everything. You should give us up, Ruth said. Tell Gideon he can have us. Save yourself. That's not happening. Why not? You don't owe us anything. You tried. That's more than most people would do. But Tommy's dying. We're all dying. At least if we go back to the camp, some of us might survive. You call that surviving? Ruth's composure cracked. I call it better than watching Tommy die because you're too stubborn to quit. She turned and ran to the other room. Cole heard her crying, the sound muffled like she was pressing her face into a blanket, trying to be quiet even in her grief. Vivian touched Cole's arm. She's not wrong. We're out of options, out of food, out of time, maybe. No. Cole's voice was harder than he'd intended. I've surrendered before. Watched good men get marched off to prisoner camps where they died slow and miserable. I'm not doing it again. This isn't the war. It's always the war. Different uniforms, same choice. Fight or quit. Die free or live in chains. He looked down at Tommy's pale face. I'm not handing these kids over to be slaves again. I'd rather we all go down fighting. Even if it kills them? They're already dead if we give up. At least this way they die knowing someone cared enough to fight for them. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned against Cole, her head on his shoulder. She felt too light, too fragile. They were all breaking down. Daniel would have liked you, she said softly. He was always looking for people who'd stand when it mattered. Never found many. Maybe he was looking in the wrong places. Or maybe there just aren't many left. That afternoon, one of Gideon's men rode forward under a white flag. Cole watched from the window, rifle ready, not trusting anything that came from that camp. The rider stopped 20 yards from the house and called out, Gideon wants to talk. Just talk. No tricks. Tell him to come say whatever he wants to say, and then leave. He wants you to come out, meet him halfway, neutral ground. Not happening. He says if you don't, he's going to burn the barn with your livestock inside. Let you listen to them scream. Cole's jaw clenched. His horses, his cattle, the animals Sarah had helped him raise, the last pieces of the life they'd built together. He's bluffing, Vivian said from behind him. Maybe, maybe not. You go out there, he'll kill you. Probably. So don't go. Cole looked at the children huddled around the cold fireplace. They were listening, understanding that their fates hung on whatever came next. Ruth had stopped crying. She watched Cole with those old eyes that had seen too much. I'm going, Cole said. That's suicide. Everything's suicide at this point. At least this way I might learn something useful. He walked to the door, checked his pistol, made sure it was loaded. Vivian grabbed his arm. If you don't come back, you keep those kids alive as long as you can. When the end comes, make it quick. Don't let Gideon take them alive. Her face went white. You're asking me to. I'm asking you to do what needs doing. Same as your husband would have done. Same as you would have done if I'd never found you in that barn. Vivian's hand tightened on his arm. Then she released him and stepped back. I'm a terrible shot with this shoulder. If things go wrong out there, I might not be able to help. Then let's hope things don't go wrong. Cole stepped out into the cold. The sun hung low and pale, offering no warmth. His breath plumed white. His boots crunched through the frozen crust on the snow. Gideon sat his horse 50 yards out, waiting. He looked exactly like what he was, a wealthy man playing at being a frontiersman. His coat was too new, his horse too well fed. Everything about him screamed money and power. Cole walked forward until they were 20 feet apart, close enough to talk, far enough that if shooting started, he might have a chance to dive for cover. Mr. Barrett, Gideon said pleasantly, like they were meeting at a church social. Thank you for agreeing to talk. I didn't agree to anything. Say what you came to say. Always so hostile, Gideon smiled. I'm trying to help you. Trying to give you a way out of this that doesn't end with everyone dead. Your help usually comes with a bullet in the back. The smile never wavered. My brother made his choice. He stole from me. Corrupted children who were legally contracted to my operations. When I tried to resolve the matter peacefully, he became violent. I defended myself. The fact that his widow has convinced those children otherwise doesn't change the truth. The truth is you murdered him in cold blood. The truth is whatever the courts decide. And the courts will side with me because I have evidence, witnesses, and legal documentation proving everything I've done is within the law. Gideon leaned forward slightly. You, on the other hand, are harboring a fugitive and stolen property. You fired on my men, threatened my life. You're a criminal, Barrett, and criminals don't get happy endings. Neither do men who build empires on child slavery. Child labor, legal child labor. There's a difference. Not to the children there isn't. Gideon's smile finally faded. You're a romantic, an idealist. You think you're some kind of hero, standing up for the weak and innocent, but you're just a fool who's about to die for nothing. Those children will end up back in my camps whether you live or not. The woman will hang for murder. And your ranch, this pathetic little patch of frozen dirt you call home, will be seized for unpaid taxes and sold to cover your crimes. Is that supposed to scare me? It's supposed to wake you up. Gideon's voice hardened. I'm offering you one final chance. Walk away. Right now. Leave the children and the woman. Ride off and never come back. I'll forget you were ever involved. You get to live. That's more mercy than you deserve. Cole looked back at his house. Through the window he could see Ruth watching. Behind her, the other children. Vivian holding Tommy in her arms. He thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made to her to be a good man, about the 3 years he'd spent breaking that promise by refusing to care about anything. No, Cole said. No, I'm not leaving. I'm not walking away. And when federal marshals finally show up, and they will show up, you're going to wish you'd killed me when you had the chance. Because I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell everyone what you really are. And those children are going to tell everyone what they saw you do. And your empire's going to come down so hard you'll be lucky if they just hang you. Gideon studied Cole for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. The mask of civility finally cracking. You actually believe that, Gideon said softly. You actually think justice exists. That good people win and bad people lose. You think this is some kind of story where virtue triumphs. He shook his head. I've killed 17 men who stood in my way. Some of them were better men than you, braver, smarter, all of them just as convinced they were on the right side. Where are they now, Barrett? In the ground, forgotten. While I'm still here, still building, still winning. Then make it 18. But you'll have to shoot me in the front. I won't turn my back on you like your brother did. For a second, Cole thought Gideon might actually draw. Saw his hand twitch toward his pistol, saw the calculation in his eyes. Then Gideon smiled again. That cold shark smile. No, I'm not going to make you a martyr. I'm going to make you watch. Watch the children starve. Watch them freeze. Watch them beg me to take them back just to make the suffering stop. And when you finally break, and you will break, I'm going to make you live with it. Going to make you spend the rest of your miserable life knowing you could have saved them and chose not to. He wheeled his horse around and rode back to his camp. Cole stood alone in the snow, his heart hammering, his hands shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Pure burning rage at a world that let men like Gideon exist, that let them profit from misery, that called evil things by gentle names and looked away while children died. He walked back to the house. Vivian met him at the door. Well? He's not leaving. We're not leaving. That's where we stand. So we wait to die. We wait for Noah. But Noah didn't come. Not that day, not the next. By day 10, Tommy's fever had spiked so high he was delirious, crying for a mother he couldn't remember. Ruth sat beside him, holding his hand, singing songs in a voice that kept breaking. Cole gave him the last of the water. His own tongue felt thick and swollen. His lips had cracked and bled. The children had stopped moving much, conserving energy they didn't have. On day 11, Marcus passed out during his watch shift, just slumped over, unconscious. James started crying, the first sound Cole had heard from either twin. The boy wouldn't stop, just kept sobbing like something inside him had finally shattered. We're dying, Ruth said that night. She sat beside Cole at the window, both of them too weak to do much besides watch. Not fighting, not escaping, just dying slow. I know. Was it worth it? Standing up to Gideon? All this? Cole thought about the question. Thought about Sarah's voice in his memory, telling him to be good. Thought about Daniel dying in his own kitchen while trying to save children nobody else wanted. Yeah, he said finally, it was worth it. Even if we all die? Even then, because we didn't quit, didn't give up, didn't sell out to save ourselves. That matters. Does it? Ruth's voice was bitter. Who's going to know? Who's going to remember? Gideon will make sure we all just disappear. Make up some story about how we died in an accident, or got killed by bandits, or just wandered off and froze. Nobody's going to know we even fought. We'll know. That has to be enough. Ruth leaned against Cole's shoulder. She felt like a bundle of sticks wrapped in cloth. They all did. I'm glad we found you, she whispered. Even if it ends like this, I'm glad someone cared. Cole didn't trust himself to speak. He just put his arm around the girl and held her while the cold seeped in through the walls and their lives ticked away minute by minute. On the morning of day 12, Cole woke to silence. Complete, absolute silence. No wind. No sound from Gideon's camp. Nothing. He dragged himself to the window and looked out. The camp was gone. Riders, tents, everything. Just trampled snow and cold campfires. What the hell? Vivian appeared beside him, moving slow. They left? Looks like. Why would they? Her eyes widened. It's a trick, has to be. They're trying to draw us out. Cole studied the empty landscape. She was probably right. Gideon wouldn't just give up. Not after 12 days, not when he was winning. But then he saw it. A distant dust cloud to the south. Moving fast, getting closer. Riders, Cole said. A lot of them. His heart kicked against his ribs. Noah. It had to be Noah. The boy had made it. Had brought help. Or Gideon had just gone to get reinforcements. Get the children ready, Cole ordered. Either we're about to be saved or we're about to make our last stand. Either way, everyone needs to be awake. The riders came on fast. Cole counted at least 20, maybe more. They rode in formation, disciplined, nothing like the ragtag bounty hunters Gideon employed. Federal marshals. Had to be. The lead rider carried a flag, stars and stripes, the territorial seal. Cole felt something crack inside his chest. Hope, painful and sharp and desperate. The riders pulled up in front of the house. The lead man dismounted. He was older than Cole, maybe 50, with a weathered face and cold blue eyes that had seen their share of trouble. He wore a marshal's badge on his coat. Cole Barrett, the man called. Cole opened the door, had to brace himself against the frame to stay standing. That's me. Clayton Webb, federal marshal. Got a letter from a boy named Noah. Claims you're harboring a woman wrongly accused of murder and several children being hunted by a man named Gideon Hale. That about right? That's exactly right. Webb studied Cole's face, took in the gaunt features, the cracked lips, the way he swayed on his feet. How long you been under siege? 12 days. And you're still standing. That's something. Webb turned to his men. Thompson, Miller, search the area. Make sure Hale's men actually cleared out. The rest of you, secure the perimeter. Marshals scattered in all directions. Webb walked toward the house. Mind if I come in? Like to talk to this woman and the children. Hear their side of things. Long as you don't try to arrest anyone. Son, if what that boy told me is true, the only person getting arrested is Gideon Hale. Cole stepped aside and let Webb enter. The marshal stopped just inside the door, his face hardening as he took in the scene. 6 children sitting around a cold fireplace, their faces hollow with starvation. A woman barely able to stand. A small boy lying unconscious in the corner. Sweet mother of... Webb's voice went rough. How long since these kids ate? 2 days? Maybe 3. Webb turned and shouted out the door. Andrews, get food over here, now! And medical supplies. He knelt beside Tommy and felt the boy's forehead. This one needs a doctor. They all do. Closest doctor's in Clemson, 6 hours ride. Then someone better ride fast. Webb stood and looked at Vivian. You're Vivian Hale? The woman accused of murdering Daniel Hale. I didn't kill him. Vivian's voice was steady despite her weakness. Gideon killed his own brother. These children witnessed it. So the boy said, I'm going to need to hear the whole story. But first, he looked at Cole. We're going to get everyone fed and warm. Then we're going to sort this mess out properly. The marshals brought food, real food, bread and cheese and dried beef and coffee so hot and strong it burned going down. The children ate slowly, carefully, their shrunken stomachs unable to handle much at first. Tommy woke up long enough to drink some broth. His eyes focused on Ruth and he smiled weakly before drifting off again. Webb listened while they ate. Listened to Vivian tell the story of Daniel's murder. Listened to Noah, who'd arrived with the marshals, looking proud and exhausted and terrified all at once. Describe the camps and the labor contracts and the night they'd run. Listen to Ruth describe being bought when she was 6 and worked until her hands bled. Listen to Marcus and James talk about the mine collapse that killed their parents and the debt that enslaved them afterward. When they were done, Webb was quiet for a long time. His face had gone hard as granite. "Gideon's claiming you stole his property," Webb finally said. "Says he's got legal contracts proving these children owe him labor." "Those contracts are illegal," Vivian said. "You can't enslave children. You'd be surprised what you can do if you word it right and pay off the right judges." Webb's voice was bitter. "I've seen contracts like these before. They're evil, but they're technically legal in this territory. Hard to prosecute." Cole felt something die inside his chest. "So you're saying we did all this for nothing? Gideon gets away with it?" "I'm saying it's complicated, but..." Webb held up a hand. "There's one thing contracts can't cover: murder. And if these children witnessed Gideon kill his own brother, that changes everything." "They're children," Vivian said. "Their testimony won't hold up in court. Everyone knows that. Maybe? Maybe not. Depends on the judge, depends on how they testify." Webb looked at Noah. "You ready to tell that story in front of a courtroom? Knowing Gideon's lawyers are going to try to tear you apart? Knowing your life might depend on whether people believe you?" Noah's face was pale but determined. "I'm ready." "Good. Because we're going to need all of you." Webb stood. "I'm placing Vivian Hale under federal protection pending investigation. The children are coming with me to Billings. We're going to bring formal charges against Gideon Hale for murder, child trafficking, and corruption of public officials." "That's going to start a war," Cole said. "It already is a war. We're just finally fighting back." Webb moved toward the door, then stopped. "You did good, Barrett. Most men would have turned these people away, saved themselves the trouble." "Most men aren't worth much." Webb smiled grimly. "No, they're not." The marshals worked fast. They loaded the children onto horses, wrapped them in blankets, gave them more food for the journey. Tommy was tied to a deputy's horse, still unconscious but breathing steadier. Vivian stood in front of Cole, her eyes wet. "You saved us. I don't know how to..." "Don't." Cole's voice was rough. "Just make sure Gideon pays for what he did. Make sure those other children, the ones he took back, get freed. That's all the thanks I need." She kissed his cheek. "We'll see you in Billings for the trial. Webb's gonna need you to testify too." "I'll be there." Noah approached last. The boy looked older somehow, like the ride to Billings and back had aged him years instead of days. "Thank you," Noah said simply. "You're the one who saved everyone, kid. Fastest ride I've ever heard of." "I couldn't have done it if you hadn't given me the chance, hadn't stood up when nobody else would." They shook hands. Then Noah mounted up behind one of the marshals, and the whole group rode south toward Billings and whatever came next. Cole stood in front of his shot-up, half-frozen ranch house and watched them disappear into the distance. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and red, beautiful and cold and endless. He was alone again, the way he'd been for 3 years, the way he'd thought he wanted to be. But it didn't feel the same anymore. The silence felt different. Not peaceful, just empty. Sarah's voice drifted through his memory one last time. "You're a good man, Cole Barrett." "Maybe," Cole said to the frozen air. "Maybe I am." He walked back into his house. It was a wreck. Bullet holes in the walls, windows shattered. Everything that could burn had been burned to stay warm. It would take months to repair. But he'd start tomorrow. Would rebuild. Would testify against Gideon. Would see this through to the end. For the first time in 3 years, Cole Barrett had something to fight for that wasn't just revenge or grief. He had a reason to keep living. And that was worth more than all the gold in Montana. The trial began 3 weeks later in Billings, in a courthouse so packed with spectators they had to turn people away at the door. Cole rode into town on a cold February morning, his horse struggling through muddy streets clogged with wagons and curious onlookers. News had spread fast about the rancher who'd stood siege for 12 days to protect 7 orphans, about the wealthy landowner accused of murdering his own brother, about children testifying against one of the most powerful men in Montana. Everyone wanted to see how it would end. The courthouse was a 2-story brick building that tried to look important but mostly just looked old. Cole tied his horse outside and pushed through the crowd. People stared at him, some with admiration, some with contempt, most with the morbid curiosity of folks watching a hanging. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and nervous sweat. Cole found a seat in the back, his hat pulled low. He'd cleaned up as best he could, but he still looked like what he was, a rancher who'd spent 3 weeks repairing his shot-up house and not sleeping much. The children sat in the front row with Vivian and Marshall Webb. They'd put on weight since Cole had last seen them. Their faces had filled out. Tommy was sitting up on his own, color back in his cheeks. Ruth had braided her hair. Noah wore a suit that was too big for him, the sleeves rolled up to show his wrists. They looked like normal children, almost. Except for the eyes. The eyes still carried too much knowledge. Gideon sat at the defense table surrounded by 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked calm, confident, like a man who'd bought his way out of worse situations than this. When his gaze swept the courtroom and landed on Cole, he smiled. That same cold shark smile. The judge entered and everyone stood. Judge Harold Mercer was 70 if he was a day, with white hair and a face carved from granite by years of frontier justice. He settled into his chair and banged his gavel. We'll have order in this court. This is a preliminary hearing to determine if there's sufficient evidence to proceed with murder charges against Gideon Hale. Prosecutor, you may begin. The prosecutor was a thin man named Wilson who looked nervous standing across from Gideon's legal team. He shuffled his papers and cleared his throat. Your Honor, the territory will prove that on the evening of January 4th, Gideon Hale murdered his brother Daniel Hale in cold blood. That he did so to seize control of property and children he viewed as his rightful assets, and that he subsequently framed the victim's widow to cover his crime. One of Gideon's lawyers stood smoothly. Your Honor, this is absurd. My client is a respected businessman. The real murderer is sitting in this courtroom. Vivian Hale, a woman who killed her husband for his inheritance and has spent the last month coaching these children to lie. We'll see about that, Judge Mercer said. Call your first witness, Mr. Wilson. The territory calls Vivian Hale. Vivian stood and walked to the witness stand. She moved carefully, her shoulder still healing. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. When she sat down, her eyes found Cole in the back row. He nodded once. She took a breath and began. She told the story clearly without embellishment, how Daniel had spent years buying children out of work contracts, how Gideon had arrived demanding their return, how Daniel had refused, how Gideon had pulled his gun and fired before anyone could react. And where were the children during this? Wilson asked. In the kitchen. All of them. They saw everything. Objection, one of Gideon's lawyers said, standing. The witness is attempting to introduce hearsay through reference to other testimony. Sustained. Mrs. Hale, confine yourself to what you personally witnessed. Vivian's jaw tightened. I witnessed my husband die. I witnessed Gideon standing over his body with a smoking gun. I witnessed him threaten to kill every child in that house if they spoke about what they'd seen. And yet you expect this court to believe that these children, who are legally contracted to my client's operations, will testify truthfully? Gideon's lawyer moved forward, circling like a predator. Isn't it true that you've had 3 weeks to coach them, to threaten them, to promise them freedom if they lie? I've never threatened them, never coached them. I've told them to tell the truth. The truth. How convenient that your version of truth happens to exonerate you and condemn my client. The lawyer's voice dripped with contempt. Isn't it true that you killed your husband because he was planning to return the children to their rightful owners? That you saw your comfortable life disappearing and you took desperate action? That's a lie. Is it? Or is it simply a different truth than the one you've spent 3 weeks constructing? Wilson stood. Objection. The defense is testifying. Sustained. Move along, counselor. The questioning went on for 2 hours. Gideon's lawyers attacked from every angle, trying to paint Vivian as a murderer, a liar, a woman driven by greed and spite. She held steady, but Cole could see the toll it was taking, could see her hands shaking, her voice growing hoarse. Finally, Judge Mercer called for a recess. The courtroom erupted into conversation. Cole pushed his way through to the front where Webb stood with the children. "How's she holding up?" Cole asked. "Better than expected, but they're going to tear into the children worse, especially Noah." Webb's face was grim. Gideon's lawyers know that if the children's testimony holds, their client hangs. They're going to do everything they can to break them. Will they? Webb looked at the 7 children sitting together on a bench, sharing bread someone had brought them. "I don't know. They're strong, but they're still kids, and those lawyers are professionals at making people look like liars." When court reconvened, Wilson called Noah to the stand. The boy walked forward with his head up, but Cole could see the fear beneath the surface. Noah placed his hand on the Bible and swore his oath. His voice barely carried beyond the first row. "Please state your name for the record," Wilson said. "Noah. Noah Graves." "And how old are you, Noah?" 13, I think." "You think?" "I don't know exactly. Nobody ever told me when I was born. The mine company said I was 6 when my parents died, so I guess that makes me 13 now." Wilson nodded gently. "Tell the court what you witnessed on January 4th. Noah took a breath. Cole watched the boy's hands clench in his lap. "We were in the kitchen, all of us. Mrs. Vivian was making dinner. Mr. Daniel was telling us about—" His voice caught. "He was telling us about spring, about how we'd plant gardens when the snow melted, how we'd all help, how it would be good. And then what happened? Mr. Gideon came in. He didn't knock, just walked in like he owned the place. He had men with him, 3 of them, all carrying guns. He said—" Noah's voice went quiet. "He said the children belonged to him, said we were his property and Mr. Daniel had stolen us." "What did Daniel say to that?" "He said we weren't property, said we were people, said his brother could go to hell before he'd hand us over." A ghost of a smile crossed Noah's face. Mr. Daniel didn't curse much, but he did then. A few people in the courtroom chuckled. Judge Mercer banged his gavel. "Order," Wilson continued. "What happened next?" "Mr. Gideon pulled his gun. Mr. Daniel was pouring coffee. He didn't even see it coming. There was a shot, and Mr. Daniel fell down. There was blood everywhere. Mrs. Vivian screamed. We all screamed. And Mr. Gideon just stood there looking at his brother and said—" Noah's voice broke completely. Tears ran down his face, but he didn't wipe them away. He said, "You should have taken the deal." The courtroom had gone silent. Even Gideon's lawyers seemed unsure how to proceed. Then the lead lawyer stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to cross-examine the witness." "Proceed." The lawyer approached Noah with a smile that was supposed to look kind. It didn't. "Noah, you've been through a terrible ordeal. I can see that, but I need you to think very carefully about what you're saying. A man's life hangs in the balance." "I know, Mr. Daniel's life. Mr. Gideon took it. You say you saw my client fire the shot. But the kitchen was full of people, wasn't it? Chaotic, frightening. Could you have been mistaken about who held the gun?" "No." "You're certain, even though you were terrified, even though it happened very fast?" "I'm certain." "And yet you didn't tell anyone for 3 weeks. You ran instead of going to the authorities? Why is that?" Noah's face hardened. "Because the authorities work for your client. The sheriff, the deputies, the judges in Helena, they're all on Mr. Gideon's payroll. Who was I supposed to tell?" "That's a very convenient excuse. Or perhaps the truth is you ran because Mrs. Hale forced you to. Perhaps she's the one who actually killed Daniel Hale, and you're all too frightened of her to tell the truth." "That's a lie." "Is it? You're an orphan, Noah. You have nothing. Mrs. Hale offered you a home, food, safety, and all you had to do was lie for her. Isn't that what really happened?" "No!" Noah was crying openly now, his voice rising. "I watched Mr. Gideon kill the only man who ever treated me like I mattered. He shot him in the back and then looked at all of us and said if we ever told anyone, he'd hunt us down and kill us one by one. That's the truth." The lawyer's smile never wavered. The passionate outburst of a coached child. No further questions. Wilson re-examined, trying to shore up Noah's testimony, but the damage was done. Cole could see it on the jurors' faces. Doubt. They wanted to believe the boy, but Gideon's lawyer had planted the seed. Maybe the children had been manipulated. Maybe Vivian was the real murderer. The other children testified one by one. Ruth, calm and precise, describing every detail of that night. Marcus and James finishing each other's sentences, corroborating Noah's account. Little Tommy, barely able to speak above a whisper, telling how he'd hidden under the table and watched Mr. Daniel die. Each time, Gideon's lawyers tore into them, suggested they'd been threatened, bribed, coached, made them cry, made them angry, made them look like exactly what they were, desperate children who'd say anything to avoid going back to the camps. By the end of the second day, Cole wasn't sure anymore if truth would be enough. On the morning of the third day, Wilson called Cole to the stand. Cole walked forward, feeling every eye in the courtroom on him. He swore his oath and sat down, his hat in his hands. "Mr. Barrett," Wilson began, "please tell the court how you came to be involved in this matter." Cole described finding Vivian and the children in his barn. The gunshot wound, the fear in their eyes, the story they'd told him about running from Gideon's men. "And you believed them?" "I believed they were dying. Whether their story was true or not, they needed help. So you harbored them, fed them, protected them, even though you knew there was a reward for their capture." "Yes." "Why?" Cole was quiet for a moment. He looked at Gideon, sitting calm and confident at his table. Looked at the children in the front row, watching him with those old eyes. Looked at Vivian, her hands clasped tight in her lap. "Because I'm tired of living in a world where we look away from suffering just because it's easier," Cole said slowly. "I spent 3 years after my wife died telling myself that other people's problems weren't my concern, that I'd earned the right to hide on my ranch and ignore everything else. Then these kids showed up and I realized there's no such thing as earning the right to stop caring. You either care or you don't. You either stand up or you don't. I chose to stand. Even knowing it might cost you everything? Especially knowing that." Gideon's lead lawyer stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Barrett, isn't it true that you're a drunk? That you've spent the last 3 years drinking yourself into oblivion?" "I've had my share of whiskey." "More than your share, from what I hear. Isn't it possible that your judgment was impaired? That you believed a false story told by a desperate woman because you were lonely and intoxicated? My judgment was clear enough to know right from wrong." "Was it? Or were you simply looking for a cause, a reason to feel important again? You couldn't save your wife, so you decided to save these children instead. Isn't that closer to the truth?" Cole's hands tightened on his hat. "Maybe. But that doesn't change what happened. Doesn't change that Gideon murdered his brother. You didn't witness the murder, did you?" "No. You have no physical evidence. No proof beyond the word of frightened children and a widow with every reason to lie. I have the proof of what Gideon did next. He laid siege to my ranch, tried to starve us out, threatened to burn my animals alive. Men who are innocent don't act like that. Men who are trying to reclaim their stolen property act exactly like that." The lawyer's voice went hard. "You interfered with a legal recovery operation. You fired on my client's employees. You harbored fugitives. By your own admission, you're guilty of multiple crimes, and yet you sit here acting like some kind of hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who did what he thought was right." "No, Mr. Barrett. You're a man who believed a lie and nearly got 7 children killed because of it." Cole opened his mouth to argue, but Wilson's objection cut him off. The judge sustained it. The cross-examination continued for another hour, but Cole barely heard it. He kept thinking about that last line. Nearly got 7 children killed. It was true, wasn't it? His stand could have ended with all of them dead. If Noah hadn't made it to Billings, if Webb hadn't believed him, if any one of a dozen things had gone differently, those kids would be back in the camps or buried in unmarked graves. Was good intention enough if the result could have been disaster? When Cole finally left the stand, he wasn't sure anymore what he'd accomplished. Wasn't sure if he'd helped or hurt. The prosecution rested. Gideon's lawyers called their own witnesses, sheriffs who swore Vivian had always seemed unstable, business associates who testified to Gideon's upstanding character, workers from his operations who claimed the children were treated well and the labor contracts were fair. It was all lies, but they were delivered smoothly, professionally, by people who knew how to make lies sound like truth. On the 4th day, Gideon himself took the stand. He was perfect, composed, sad about his brother's death, but firm in his conviction that Vivian was responsible. He spoke about the burden of managing multiple business operations, about trying to provide opportunities for orphan children, about his shock when his brother turned against him. "I love Daniel," Gideon said, his voice thick with false emotion. But he changed. Started believing that labor contracts were the same as slavery. Started stealing children from my operations. I tried to reason with him, tried to make him see that what he was doing would destroy both of us. But he wouldn't listen. And on the night of January 4th, his lawyer prompted, I went to talk to him one last time, to beg him to stop. But when I arrived, he and Vivian were arguing, violently. I heard a gunshot, rushed inside. Daniel was on the floor, and Vivian was holding a gun. She saw me and ran, took the children with her to use as shields. It was a good story, a convincing story, and it had just enough truth mixed in to make it plausible. Wilson tried to poke holes during cross-examination, but Gideon never wavered, never lost his composure. He answered every question with the calm certainty of a man who believed his own lies. When the testimony finally ended, Judge Mercer called for closing arguments. Wilson stood first. He was sweating, his voice shaking slightly. Your Honor, members of the jury, the evidence is clear. 7 children witnessed Gideon Hale murder his brother. They've testified under oath, at great personal risk, to tell this court the truth. Mrs. Hale has testified. Mr. Barrett has testified. All of them telling the same story. The only person saying otherwise is the accused and witnesses he's paid for. Gideon's lawyer stood for his closing. The evidence is indeed clear that a desperate woman killed her husband and has spent the last month manipulating traumatized children to cover her crime. These children have been through hell. They'll say anything to avoid going back to the camps. And Mrs. Hale has exploited that fear to construct an elaborate fiction. My client is innocent, and I urge you to see through this transparent attempt to destroy a good man's reputation. Judge Mercer instructed the jury. They filed out to deliberate. Then came the waiting. Cole stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, smoking a cigarette he'd bummed off a deputy. The children sat on a bench nearby, silent. Vivian paced back and forth, her face pale. What do you think? She asked Cole. I think we did everything we could. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. People drifted in and out of the courthouse. Some placed bets on the verdict. Cole wanted to punch every one of them. Finally, the bailiff emerged. Jury's back. They filed into the courtroom. The jury returned to their seats, their faces unreadable. Judge Mercer asked if they'd reached a verdict. The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. What say you? The foreman looked at Gideon, then at the children, then back at the judge. On the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom exploded. People shouting, cheering, cursing. Gideon's face went white. His lawyers immediately started shouting about appeals. The children grabbed each other, crying with relief. Vivian collapsed into her chair like someone had cut her strings. Judge Mercer banged his gavel until the room quieted. Gideon Hale, you have been found guilty of the murder of your brother Daniel Hale. You will be remanded to custody pending sentencing. Bailiff, take him away. The bailiffs moved forward. Gideon stood slowly, his composure finally cracking. His eyes swept the courtroom and landed on Cole. This isn't over, Gideon said quietly. I'll appeal. I'll win. And when I do, you'll do nothing, Judge Mercer interrupted, because you'll be dead. This court sentences you to hang by the neck until dead. Sentence to be carried out in 30 days. Gideon's face went from white to gray. The bailiffs took him away, his expensive shoes dragging on the wooden floor. Cole stood there feeling nothing. Not triumph, not relief, just empty. They'd won. But winning felt like just another kind of losing. The celebrations went on outside. People clapping Cole on the back, buying him drinks, calling him a hero. He slipped away as soon as he could and found the children sitting on the courthouse steps with Vivian and Webb. What happens now? Ruth asked. Webb sat down beside her. Now we go after the rest of Gideon's operation. Shut down the camps, free the other children, hold everyone involved accountable. All of them? Marcus asked. As many as we can. It won't be perfect. Some will escape, some will buy their way out. But we'll do what we can. And us? Tommy's small voice asked. Where do we go? That was the question, wasn't it? The trial was over. Justice had been served. But 7 children still had no home, no family, no future beyond whatever charity could provide. Vivian looked at Cole. I was thinking, If Mr. Barrett would agree, maybe we could rebuild Daniel's ranch, make it a real sanctuary, a place for children like you, like all the others who need help. Cole shook his head. That ranch is 3 days from here, too isolated, too hard to defend if more of Gideon's people come looking for revenge. Then where? Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something he hadn't known he was going to say until the words left his mouth. My place. It's not much, needs a lot of work. But there's land, space, and it's mine. Nobody can take it away. We could build something there, something that lasts. The children stared at him. Vivian stared at him. Even Webb looked surprised. You're serious? Vivian asked. I think so. Yeah, I'm serious. Cole looked at the 7 faces watching him with that familiar wariness. I spent 3 years alone in that house, wishing I was dead. Then you all showed up and reminded me what it feels like to care about something, to fight for something. I'm not ready to go back to being alone. That's... Vivian's voice cracked. That's one hell of an offer. It's a practical one. You know how to run an operation like this? I've got the land and a gun hand if anyone comes looking for trouble. Between us, we might actually pull it off. Ruth stood up and walked over to Cole. She looked up at his face for a long moment. Then she wrapped her arms around his waist and held on tight. One by one, the other children joined her. Noah and Tommy and Marcus and James and the others whose names Cole was still learning. They piled on until he was surrounded by small bodies and tears and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Vivian watched them with her hand over her mouth. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Daniel would have loved you. Guess I would have liked him too. They left Billings the next morning. The whole group, Cole, Vivian, 7 children, and 2 of Webb's deputies assigned to make sure they got home safe. The journey took 3 days through snow that was finally starting to melt. Spring was coming. Late, like everything in Montana, but coming. When they finally reached the ranch, Cole barely recognized it. Someone had been there. He tensed, reaching for his rifle, until he saw the note nailed to the door. Heard what you did. Figure you could use some help. We fixed what we could. Come by town when you're ready and we'll talk about the rest. It was signed by 6 different ranchers from the area. Men Cole barely knew. Men who'd apparently decided that standing up to someone like Gideon was worth supporting. Inside, the house had been repaired. Windows replaced. Walls patched. Even the furniture had been fixed. It wasn't perfect. Nothing in life was. But it was livable. The children scattered to explore, their voices echoing through rooms that had been silent too long. Ruth found Sarah's old sewing basket and asked if she could use it. Tommy discovered Cole's collection of books and begged to have one read to him. Noah just stood in the kitchen, looking at the place where Cole had pulled a bullet from Vivian's shoulder and said quietly, "This is where it started. Where everything changed." "Yeah," Cole said. "I guess it did." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Cole taught the older children ranch work, how to mend fences, care for animals, work land that fought you every step of the way. Vivian taught the younger ones reading and writing and arithmetic. They all worked together to expand the house, building new rooms for everyone. Word spread about what they were doing. Other children started showing up. Runaways from camps, orphans from towns that didn't want them, kids who'd heard there was a place where nobody would hurt them. Vivian and Cole took them all in, fed them, taught them, gave them what Daniel had tried to give them, a chance. 6 weeks after the trial, a writer came with news. Gideon had killed himself in his jail cell the night before his scheduled execution. Left a note confessing to everything, the murder, the camps, the corruption. He'd also left instructions transferring his remaining assets to a trust for the children he'd exploited. It was blood money, dirty money. But Vivian decided to take it anyway. Daniel always said you couldn't fix evil with purity, she told Cole. Sometimes you had to use the devil's own tools against him. We'll take Gideon's money and use it to undo everything he built. Seems fitting. They used the money to buy more land, to build proper schoolrooms and dormitories, to hire teachers and doctors. Within a year, the ranch had grown from 7 children to 30, then 50, then more than Cole could count. They called it Haven Ridge because Ruth said that's what it felt like, a ridge standing high above all the cruelty below, a place where you could finally breathe. The years passed, the children grew. Some left to start their own lives. Some stayed to help run the operation. Noah became a teacher, sharing what Vivian had taught him. Ruth learned medicine from the doctor they'd hired and started treating the sick and injured from miles around. Tommy, who'd almost died in Cole's house, grew into a quiet young man who spent his days working with horses and reading poetry. More children came. Always more. Because the world kept producing orphans and Montana kept producing men who saw children as property instead of people. But now there was somewhere for them to go. Somewhere safe. Cole and Vivian never married. People assumed they would, but it never felt right. What they had was something different, a partnership built on shared trauma and shared purpose. They were family without needing a ceremony to make it official. Cole was 63 when Vivian got sick. Cancer, like Sarah. The kind that ate you from inside and didn't care how much fight you had left. She lasted 6 months. Long enough to see the ranch celebrate its 30th anniversary. Long enough to watch Tommy get married and Ruth accept a position at a hospital in Denver. Long enough to tell Cole that she was proud of what they'd built. Daniel would have loved this place, she said near the end, her voice thin. All these kids. All this life. You built it. You and him. I just provided the land. You provided more than land. You provided the one thing Daniel and I always ran out of, the willingness to stand when everyone else looked away. Her hand found his. Thank you for that. Thank you for being stubborn enough to fight. She died on a Tuesday morning in early spring, surrounded by children who'd become adults and adults who'd been children. They buried her beside Daniel, whose body they'd finally recovered and brought home. The headstone read exactly what she'd asked for: family is chosen by love. Cole lived another 7 years, long enough to see Haven Ridge become famous across the West as the place where broken children went to heal. Long enough to watch Noah publish a book about their story. Long enough to see more than 200 children grow up and leave and make lives for themselves. He died quietly in his sleep at 70, in the same house where he'd once pulled a bullet from a dying woman's shoulder. Ruth and Noah were with him at the end, along with Tommy and Marcus and James and all the others who'd become his family without sharing his blood. They buried him beside Vivian and Daniel. 3 people who'd chosen to fight when fighting seemed impossible. Who'd stood together when standing alone would have been easier. The ranch continued after Cole died. It's still there today, run by the descendants of those first 7 children. Still taking in kids nobody else wants. Still proving that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. The story of Cole Barrett and Vivian Hale became legend in Montana. Some versions got the details wrong. Some made it more dramatic than it was. Some turned Cole into a perfect hero instead of the broken man he'd actually been. But the truth was simple. Simpler than any legend. A man who'd given up on caring learned to care again. A woman who'd lost everything found a reason to keep fighting. And 7 children who'd been treated like property proved they were human beings worth dying for. That's the story. Not about perfect people. Not about easy choices. Just about people who decided that looking away wasn't an option anymore. The world's full of suffering. Always has been. Always will be. You can spend your whole life hiding from it, pretending it's not your problem, waiting for someone else to fix it. Or you can stand up, knowing you'll probably fail, knowing it'll cost you everything. Knowing that even if you win, the victory will be messy and incomplete and never quite enough. But you stand anyway. Because that's what being human means. Caring when caring hurts. Fighting when the fight seems lost. Choosing family over isolation and hope over despair. Cole Barrett chose to stand. So did Vivian. So did 7 children who should have been too broken to believe in anything good. And because they did, hundreds of other children got to grow up safe. Got to learn that the world had people in it worth trusting. Got to become the kind of adults who stand up for others the way someone once stood up for them. That's what matters. Not the violence or the trial or the dramatic moments that make good stories. What matters is the quiet work that came after. The years of building something better. The choice to keep caring even when caring meant carrying grief you'd never fully heal from. On the gravestone they share at Haven Ridge, beneath the words, "Family is chosen by love," someone added one more line years later. They stood when standing mattered most. That's the legacy. Not perfection. Just the stubborn, painful, beautiful choice to stand. And if you've listened this far, if you've followed this story from that frozen barn to this final resting place, maybe that's your calling too. To stand. To care. to fight for someone who can't fight for themselves. The world's still full of suffering, still full of children who need someone to give a damn, still full of Gideons who profit from pain, and it's still full of people like Cole, like Vivian, like you, people who could look away but choose not to. That's where the story ends, but it's also where yours begins.